it was Tuesday morning. It was about 2 a.m. in this windowless box of a room, and all of a sudden my pool floaty just goes, and I just sink to the floor, and I'm laying on these tiles thinking, what am I doing?
Yeah. If you don't mind, I'd love to hear about your personal story, obviously coming to Australia, and how the ISR story as well, and your passion that drives that.
Yeah, it's probably been well publicised, but my background is not sales, and I don't know too many people that are born wanting to be a sales professional or salesperson. And if you did say that, you'd probably be chastised by your parents. But my background is actually engineering, so I was a mechanical maintenance engineer for 8 years in the UK. I talk about my quarter-life crisis at the age of 27, where I kind of got to the stage of 5 years in a relationship, owned a couple of properties, Audi TT, Siberian Husky, living the dream, if you were looking on from the outside. But I wasn't fulfilled. I wasn't overly motivated and inspired every single day. So there's a bit of a story in between, but I did decide to give it all up and jump on a plane. I didn't just leave my ex-girlfriend down. I did let her know that was happening. Jumped on a plane, moved over to Australia as a backpacker. Bit of a taster through Asia on the way through as well. Spent about 2 months through Cambodia, Vietnam, Thailand, Laos, and just doing what all good backpackers do, and we could dissect that in another interview maybe. And then I wound up in Sydney originally, because that's the only place that exists in Australia when you're English. And then I decided to travel up the coast, went to Cairns, and then travelled down. Finally got to the Gold Coast, which I now call home.
Fell in love with it?
I fell in love with it pretty much instantly. Yeah, I didn't know much of the Goldie. I obviously Surfers Paradise, and it was all by chance. I travelled to Cairns, and the aim was to work my way back down to Sydney and then live, work, stay in Sydney. And fortuitously, a guy that I played football against, soccer, not even football with, in Leicester, in my hometown in England, he lived on the Gold Coast, lived in Broadbeach. And he saw that I checked in on the Gold Coast, and he was like, "Oh, mate, I live on the Gold Coast. You fancy going for a beer?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't know anybody. I'm just travelling for a..." "Yeah, of course." So kind of didn't really know him that well at that point. We went to Fiddler's Green in Surfers, as you do. It was about 2 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Went to 2 o'clock in the morning.
It did go, that's why it finished. It actually did. Ended up there till about 2 in the morning. And then next day, met him and his missus again. And then he says, "Oh, why don't you come football training on Tuesday night?" So I went training with him at Broadbeach. He was playing for Broadbeach United at the time. Got there and it was full of Brits, and it just felt like home instantly. I've never told this story on podcast. And all of a sudden I'm like, this is pretty cool. I didn't actually know that many people in Sydney. So I'm like, why am I going back there? All of a sudden I've got a guy that's from Leicester. I've just opened up 25, 30 lads that are all of like mind. They're all the black sheep that have moved over from the UK. And I decided to stay for another week. Did 2 more football training sessions, lent some boots. Then they had a pre-season game. One of the guys like, "Well, do you want to play?" And I'm like, now I'm in. And then I got offered a job at Pack Fair working in a clothes store. And that was it. And before I knew it, I'm like, this is actually really cool. So I never left. So there was a short spell working at Pack Fair, doing a bit of retail. My issue was to get a real job. As a backpacker, you can only work for one company for 6 months. So I struggled to find work, and I ended up winding up in a call centre. I'm sure there'll be some listeners that can relate to that environment. It's character building, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly right.
That's what they say when you're hating it. It's good for you, honestly. This will serve you well in a few years. And my job was $300 a day. I got paid $400 a week for the pleasure. And I had 90 seconds to find out if somebody had $15,000 to $25,000 in their bank account, which was pretty ruthless when you take an introvert kid out of Leicester who doesn't like rejection, doesn't like confrontation, and then you've got people just abusing you all day, every day. So the story, if I fast forward a little bit, was I did that for roughly 3 months, and I was terrible at it. I genuinely hated it. It wasn't that, it's all right, I'll plod along. I used to get... I don't think I got depression, but I got a level of anxiety around picking up the phone. I didn't want to go in. I'd find reasons to send emails, or I'd be in the bathroom like 10 times a day.
That's right. I remember that as well. You just use any excuse to get out of that next call because you're like, this is just fucked.
Is your phone line playing up? Is that just me?
Exactly.
Anything but pick up the phone, right? But I did it, and I wasn't very good at it. And I wasn't very good at it so much that it was on a whiteboard. There was a sales board, and I was 21st out of 21 people. And the crux of it was, I got to the stage where I was actually sleeping in Broadbeach on the corner of Surf Parade and Britannia Avenue, a place called Crystal Gardens, at my two mates' house. They were both called James, and I was sleeping on their bathroom floor, and I had like 31 cents in my bank.
Yeah, right.
And this is the guys you met through football?
I met them both at football. Yeah, they both played for Broadbeach. So they
would have been defenders.
they both
James, you can do it.
Yeah, James Fletcher is a big centre half, and Jimmy Hamilton's an Irish fullback.
Yeah, right.
But they looked after me, and they put me up as best they could in a 2-bedroom apartment, and,
awesome.
I slept in the bathroom, and I'm sleeping on a pool floaty. And I talk about crisis points a lot, and anybody that's been trained by me will have heard this, but it was Tuesday morning. It was about 2 a.m. in this windowless box of a room, and all of a sudden my pool floaty just goes, and I just sink to the floor, and I'm laying on these tiles thinking, what am I doing? Like, what? Like, I don't enjoy it. I can't afford to look after my girlfriend Alicia. We couldn't afford to go out for sushi one day. We had no money between the two of us. So the next day I quit. And the day that I quit literally changed the whole trajectory of my life, because as you guys know, the co-founder of ISR Training, Jack, he at the time was my sales manager. And when I quit, he literally called me on it and said, I'm not letting you quit because you haven't tried. And what he meant was I hadn't truly tried to master the art and craft that is sales. And at the time, I definitely had a limiting belief that sales was a skill. I thought you were either born with the gift of the gab, and it was a natural sort of ability, which couldn't be further from the truth, by the way. It is 100% a learned skill. And he said to me, give me 60 days. He goes, for the next 60 days, I want you to fanatically consume as much information as you can around sales, negotiation, body language, emotional intelligence, behavioral science, of which I didn't know any of those words. And he said, if in 60 days you're still 21st on the board, I'll pay for you and Alicia to fly wherever you want. She's from Auckland. You can go to New Zealand, go back to the UK, go wherever you want, but go home or go away with your head held high, knowing you gave it a really good go. And then as the story goes, 5 weeks later, not 60 days, I went from 21st to 1st, and my whole mindset around sales just went, holy shit, this is just like engineering. There's a process, there's a formula, there's a system. And if you say the right words in the right order, in the right tone, people will respond in a way that you desire, which is a really dangerous and powerful skill to have. But it changed my whole perception. 18 months later, I was running that company, 47 staff, and I did $334,000 in commissions. And I'm like, oh my God, this is like, forget the money, it was impact. I was able to like send money home to my parents. My dad's been sick for a long time with cancer. I was able to support them, pay for their rent. I could never do that. I could never send them money home before. And that's when I realized that there must be more people out there like me that are ready to give up on this industry because they feel that it's a natural skill, not a learned skill. And that's where in 2014, Jack and I broke away and created ISR Training, I guess.